Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm the Technical Critic, and this is day 2 of the 12 Days of Korra. I know, this should be day 7, and I am truly sorry that this is so late, but I have a good reason. You see, the Sunday that I put the video up, it turns out I had a job interview. And I was hired as a teacher to teach for that. I have a job. My degree is not useless. Yay! And so it's been a really hectic week. Look, my kids are doing their first, they're grade 12s by the way, but my students, they're doing their very first test, and it's 14 pages long. I know, I'm a monster, but it's easy stuff. It's all review stuff that they have to do. So they've got their naming, their balancing, their drawing of structure, everything is in there. And they got to do that tomorrow. So I'm making this video now. Hopefully I can upload it tonight and edit it in the morning. So it's here for you guys when once I go off to work, and I'll try and get one out after I get home, but it's difficult because you know how it is when you work. Just no energy at all. But that's not what we are here to discuss. We are here to talk Korra. Now, for those of you who don't know, I've decided to create a 12-part series to explore everything and anything that is related to the Legend of Korra. And that's going to culminate in the final series review and discussion. I've got a whole bunch of stuff planned out, including my top 10 Legend of Korra episodes and my top 10 worst episodes of Legend of Korra. Lots of stuff to talk about, and today what we're going to be exploring is questions that Avatar Legend of Korra left open and never really seemed to answer. Now these are questions that are not only within the series, but questions that I have and that I would like to know what exactly is going on behind the scenes. Will we get answers? Hopefully someday, but for now, let's just go through and speculate on the answers a bit, eh? Now, we're going to do this season by season. So starting in season 1, probably one of the biggest questions that we, the audience, were left with has to do with Amon and his ability to take away people's bending. As a villain, that was probably that is what probably made him so truly terrible. The fact that he's able to go and take away anyone's bending at will, and his reveal was so carefully guarded through the first few episodes. The build-up was, it just built him up as a force of pure evil against the Benders in Republic City, and it is chilling. He's probably arguably one of the best villains to date in the Avatar universe. However, his ability to bend and to energy bend and to take away the bending ability is never really fully explained to the audience. There's a very partial speculative explanation that's given in terms of his ability to psychically blood bend, and that is somehow the key to his ability to then energy bend someone and take away their ability. But really and truly, anything beyond what the show gives us is nothing but clouds of speculation, and I'm going to try and see through them a bit. One possibility is that he's using some kind of combination of chi blocking and blood bending, and basically working together on the pressure points of the body to block the chi. Now we know that when you hit a bender in the chi points, they temporarily lose the ability to bend, and all of those bending points seem to culminate right here in the center of the forehead. I mean, if you look at the Combustion Man and you look at Pai Li, when the Combustion Man gets hit in the center of the forehead with a boomerang, he explodes and dies. When Pai Li gets hit in the center of the forehead with a tiny little stone, she gets temporarily stunned, just like when somebody gets chi blocked. So it seems to be there's a case for this. And if we take into account that benders use spiritual energy in order to move earth, air, fire, and water, it may be that through blood bending, Amon has somehow, by placing his thumb here, managed to access like through all the blood vessels and through the lymphatic nodes, he somehow managed to access the points in the brain that control the flow of spiritual energy and chi, and somehow managed to close them or shut them off or turn whatever's there, stop producing whatever gets produced there, midichlorian or however it is. I mean, that's the physical explanation. That's one physical explanation. The other one is that he basically does what the lion turtles do and what Avatar Aang did by actually, which according to them is tapping into the soul of a person and changing their spiritual energy simply by the force of your willpower. But you know what? Here's the thing. That poses two really key problems. Firstly, if it's a physical blockage that stops chi from flowing, it contradicts itself ever so slightly, especially with Korra, because Korra, if that's the case, then she shouldn't be able to access her airbending once her ability has been taken away, because let's face it, airbending, like any other form of bending, they all use the same chi points. Whenever we saw an airbender, Aang gets chi blocked, he can't airbend just like Katara couldn't waterbend. So we know that all the chi points have to be roughly the same in order for someone to be able to use one bending ability over another. It seems to be genetic, is what it comes down to. So basically, the problem with that is that if Korra had somehow managed to reopen her chi paths using airbending, all of her other bending, fire, water, earth, they should have followed along with it, but they didn't. So we know that that really can't be the case. The second theory has its own problem that goes on with it, and it's a much more intricate problem. And it's this. Amon knows that Korra is the Avatar, and we know from Season 2 that all of the Avatar's abilities are held within Rava, and that Rava is the source of all bending. We also know that Korra is a very powerful waterbender, but she's also a natural waterbender. So basically, Rava's energy of waterbending plus her own energy of waterbending stack one on top of the other to make her a really powerful waterbender. We know she's a really good firebender, etc., because of her temperament. She's not that great at being an earthbender, and she's not that great at being an airbender. So all of that taken into account, we can basically say Korra's got at least one ability lying dormant. I mean, if she's not, I don't know how to explain it higher than that. So let's just look at it. If Rava is integrated into Korra's spirit and Amon is energy bending her spirit, then he should at the very least be able to sense all of Korra's bending ability. I mean, he knows that Korra is the Avatar, so he would be looking for 4 different bending styles. So, like, even with her airbending lying dormant, he should still be able to find. I mean, even if you make the argument that, well, Korra is a natural waterbender, so maybe her waterbending was lying dormant, and he took all of those instead, well then, when Korra started airbending, her waterbending should have come back too, because we know that she's a natural waterbender from the Season 2 finale. It really is its own topic, but we never really get it. One very possible explanation is that if Korra's ability to airbend was lying dormant, and she has natural waterbending, and she has Rava's waterbending, suppose that Amon is looking for 4 elements. If first he takes Korra's natural waterbending, and then he takes Rava's waterbending, he takes Rava's firebending, he takes Rava's earthbending, if we assume that he can't tell the difference between one bending's energy and another bending's energy, he very easily could have taken 4 and then just left airbending because he didn't notice it, because that was dormant within her. So that is a possibility. I mean, we know that Amon thinks Korra can't bend. We know that he doesn't expect her to airbend. We know he knows that she can't airbend. So it's quite possible that when he went and he took her energy, he pretty much thought he got all of it. I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. It's a question that we can only speculate about. My second question for season 1 comes in the form of the equalist movement in its entirety. My basic question is, what is the actual oppression that the non-benders feel is being visited upon them? To the point that they're willing to take up arms and join a shadow paramilitary group that is dedicated to oppressing not one type of bender, but every single type of bender. I mean, from what we hear, it really seems that the problems facing Republic City are quite frankly a lack of police presence to deal with the mafia. I mean, let's be clear, at no point do we ever see the police go after the triads or have any real kind of presence within the city. I mean, they never seem to show up whenever a crime is being committed. They always arrive way, way too late. I mean, let's exacerbate the point. Every attack that we've ever heard that is the justification for the oppression of benders, it always seems to be firebender related. I mean, who killed Asami's mother? Firebender. Who killed Mako and Bolin's parents? Firebender trying to mug them. Who supposedly scarred him on and killed his fictional family on that farm that he never grew up on? Firebender again. If, personally speaking, if I was a waterbender or an earthbender, I would be offended that I was being called a part of the problem. Clearly, this is a firebender problem, and it needs to be dealt with through reforming. And obviously, that is the job of the Fire Nation representative to do. So, go take care of your firebender problem. Leave me alone. I mean, whatever the name of that old woman is who represents the Fire Nation. I mean, I'm not saying here, let's have racial profiling in Republic City, but clearly the police need to be looking around in Flametown and rounding up the more criminally inclined members of the community. I mean, if every attack is firebender, you need to go and look at okay, who are the firebender criminals? Here's the triad. Maybe we should focus on that, right? And actually clean up the city. I mean, even if it is the case that a few benders from each nation, Air Nation obviously excluded, for what seem to be very apparent reasons, even if the other three are oppressing the non-bender citizens, a question has to be raised to that loudmouth on the corner who's turning people against their neighbors. I mean, just a few simple questions should easily be able to destroy whatever credibility he has. I mean, you have to fight ignorance and violence with knowledge and truth. What about, and here, despite what I just said, what about the firebenders who work at the power plant, who provide electricity to the city? How are they specifically oppressing the population of Republic City? What about the earthbenders that keep the trains running? What about the waterbenders who keep your city clean? What about the airbenders on Air Temple Island? I mean, are they included in your regime of oppression? Clearly so, because Amon tries to take their bending away. Even there are only 4 of them. Even with Tenzin on the council, there are only 4 airbenders in the entire world, and 3 of them are still kids. I mean, come on. How are the kids oppressing the population? How are the airbender babies oppressing the population of Republic? Do you see how silly it seems? It seems, as you could probably tell, a bullshit argument has a tendency to fall apart as soon as simple questions by regular people are asked. And this brings me to really what my next point is. I'm not surprised that Korra couldn't keep her temper when she was talking to the dude, but what about Tenzin? Tenzin should know that this guy and a whole bunch of others are probably going and sowing the seeds of dissent amongst the populace through all of this stuff. He should at the very least be able to go out to one of these street corners and question the equalists in a calm, peaceful manner. And if not him, What about their accolades? I'm sure that the council has a PR guy and staff to work for that works for Tenzin somewhere. I mean, what, do you think he stamps his own papers and types his own documents? No, he at least has a stenographer somewhere around. I mean, you could send literally anyone who has a calm, peaceful, rational approach to go and deal with this, and you could easily get rid of it. I mean, hell, I don't have the calmest, peacefulest, rationalist approach, but I remember that there used to be these people that advocated for the student union. Probably every week, I was getting in arguments with them at the student in the front of the student commons, and they would eventually they forced me to leave. Why? Because I would destroy all their bullshit arguments with simple, logical questions. I mean, they're busy advocating for university to be free here in Canada. A few questions destroys their arguments very, very simply. Another question I have, and this one really starts to bite into the entire premise of the season. If Amon wanted to eliminate all benders, and the benders are essential for making sure that the city's power and infrastructure remains intact, then what exactly is his overall goal with the takeover of Republic City? I mean, it seems that he has some kind of plan, but he's yelling that technology has made non-benders the equals and betters of benders, yet it seems that technology is required in some way, shape, or form to rely on the benders. I mean, lightning benders, fire benders run the power plants that make the electricity. Water benders run the pipes that keep the water moving through the city. Earth benders, they do all the mining, the drilling, the refining and shaping of metals to the point that they can be turned into useful things, you know, like power gloves and electrical batons and satomobiles. Or airplanes. I mean, I agree that there are jobs that non-benders do and probably do very well, and the machines that they use help them to keep pace with the benders. I mean, let's take a look at one of the Avatar Airbender comics, The Rift. The Rift makes it perfectly clear that while bending is a very much a more elegant form of moving and refining and making factories work, it takes months or years to train a bender, whereas it takes a few weeks to train a non-bender to work a machine that does pretty much the exact same thing. But, when something goes wrong with the machine, when a part breaks down, or whatever happens, and the machines can't work anymore, it falls back to the benders to ensure that some kind of production keeps going. I mean, job for job, it's the benders who really do keep everything running within Republic City. They keep everything working. They have the skill to do skilled labor. I mean, let me give you an example. Calculators may give literally anybody the ability to do basic mathematics, addition, subtraction, multiplication, etc., right? Even mathematicians rely on calculators to do complex calculations. But you can tell, even with the calculator, who in the class is naturally gifted in mathematics. And when it comes to doing mathematics, who do you ask? Do you ask the person with the calculator, or do you ask the person who is mathematically gifted? Who do you rely on? It falls to the person who has the ability and the skill. I guess that's my argument against all the equalist stuff, but I do not see Amon's plan in anywhere in season 1. It just seems take over the city. That's pretty much it. I don't see it. Then there's the council, and this is one of the sticking points that I have with the season. There are 5 council members. However, throughout the season, 3 of them never say a word on anything that is happening in Republic City. Who the heck are they? I mean, I know that they've probably been council members for a very, very long time. I know that the woman in red, the Fire Nation ambassador, she's visible in one of the flashbacks Korra has about Tarlok when they're doing the trial about his father. in front of the council. She's there as a young woman. I mean, I wish we got some semblance of why it was deemed that they were important enough to run Republic City and see some kind of debate and see some kind of information come out of them. But quite frankly, all of that seems to have just been lost to the sands of time. It's just, it would have been nice to know who the heck these people are and what their thoughts were. I mean, what were they thinking throughout the entirety? I mean, all they really served to do was to raise their hands whenever Tarlok made a query, or made a suggestion, they just raised their hands in favor. I just wish we had more of them. That's pretty much it for season 1. I mean, I had a few more questions about things like the triads, or what Vark was doing when Amon was taking over Republic City, but they're not really that important, and they're not important enough to go through. So, considering that there's little to no evidence anyways to try and answer them. So that's pretty much it for season 1. Season 2, on the other hand, is a murky, muddy hole of a season, and there are an infinite number of questions that come out of it. However, I'm not going to try and ask them all. I'm going to try and keep it short, simple, and do as many main questions as possible. For instance, what is the overarching issue of season 2? Apparently it has something to do with religion versus secularism, but that was never really cleared up or addressed. We know what it was for season 1, the perceptions of power, and how does an excluded but important minority make their case and uphold their rights in a system that gives them no voice. That's an important thing to talk about. Season 3 was what does it mean to be part of a race and a culture that are opposed to one another. Because remember, what's the opposite of earthbending? Airbending. Where are the airbenders popping up? In the Earth Kingdom. You have two diametrically opposed beings. Earthbender culture to airbender. And I feel that while the cultural aspect could have been handled a little bit differently and flowed a little bit smoother with the narrative, they still did it fairly well. Season 4 was really concerned with what are the ramifications of PTSD, and was watching Korra and the struggle of her recovery from traumatic nostalgia, as well as a basic analysis of how good intentions can go bad when they go awry. I mean, seasons 1, 3, and 4 had wonderful overarching plots. Season 2 had none of it, and instead gave up on its theme without fully exploring what the implications could have been. Another important question: exactly how do the lines of succession work within the Water Tribe? Within the Earth Kingdom and the Fire Nation, it's been explained very well by the succession monarchy, and we've seen it happen. But if my memory serves me correctly, and I'm pretty sure it does, Katara and Sokka are heirs to the Southern Water Tribe, as their father is the chief of the Southern Water Tribe. Yue was heir to the Northern Water Tribe until she became the Moon Spirit. So my question is, who the heck are Unalaq and Tanrak? Are they the children of Sokka? Did he choose Tanrak to succeed him as Southern Water Tribe chief before his passing when he came south from the north? Probably not, so that's unlikely. I mean, if we assume that the chieftains of the tribes are by succession like all the other nations, then we have to assume that the chief of the Northern Water Tribe and the chief of the Southern Water Tribe are somehow related to one another. And we should, because Deska and Eska are Korra's cousins. So then really that begs the question: how are Sokka, Katara, and Yue related? How are Sokka and Katara related to Korra and Tonrak, and I mean, there's an entire question of family lineage here that never gets answered. I mean, Korra, Katara, Kaya, Bumi, Tenzin, if we follow the logic, it would seem that Korra and Tenzin's kids are cousins of in some way, shape, or form, if everyone's related to one another. So that is a question I would really, really like to know the answer to. And speaking on the Avatar family, Season 2 introduced us to the fact that Aang was, well, not the greatest of dads, especially to 2 out of 3 of his children. And while there are a lot of parents, especially mothers out there, who unfortunately are okay with their partners neglecting their children, and when I say neglect, I don't mean like being forced, I mean like just not being there in their lives, despite the fact that they have the ability to do so. I feel that Katara would not be one of those mothers, and that she certainly would not be okay with Aang only paying attention to one of their children and leaving her basically to raise the other 2. I mean, even if that child is an airbender, why was Aang's neglect of his children never answered until long after he was dead? I mean, 20 years, 2 decades is a very long time. As a matter of fact, it was never really addressed. I mean, the children merely made up over the fact that they had a neglectful father for 2/3 of the way through their lives. It's just, I mean, even so, there are themes of it throughout. I mean, when Bumi gets airbending, we have that great scene with him by himself, talking to Aang's statue going, "Hey Dad, I'm an airbender now. Are you proud of me now? Dad, are you proud of me?" Do you see the ramifications of what Aang's behavior in terms of his children was? He seriously messed up 2 people. Seriously messed them up. Even Tenzin became such a stick in the... Tenzin went the complete opposite way. Aang was a horrible parent, as it turns out. I mean, Avatar aside, I mean, we know that he had free time on his hands. He had time to take Tenzin to Kyoshi Island to ride Elephant Koi. He had time to go all around the world with him and teach him all this different stuff about being an airbender. He just never bothered to pay any attention to Bumi or Kaya. I honestly do not understand. I really don't, and I would like an explanation. Now, Seasons 3 and Season 4 gives us a slight, very slight, insight into the machinations of Unalaq. However, Season 3 and Season 4 really end up raising more questions than they answer. For example, how was Unalaq able to use Vatu's power against the spirits in order to bend them to his will? I mean, Vatu is sealed away within the Tree of Time. Unalaq might be able to speak with him and might be able to be influenced by him, but there's no way that the all-knowing spirits are going 100 miles within that tree for the 10,000 years Vatu is locked in there. I mean, they don't like him. They don't like him at all. Even Ko would be wary of such an evil spirit, and he's the bloody face stealer. I mean, it raises several other problems. Like, here, look at it this way. If the spirit portals are closed, right? And only the most powerful of spirits, such as past avatars, or guardians of places, or main spirits that affect the bending of the world. I mean, look at the Great Bear, look at the Lady of the Water, or Wu Ten, or the Maker of Faces. I mean, they're able to travel between the spirit world and the mortal world, but only because they are exquisitely powerful. And I know that the Great Bear, the Great Panda Bear, is extremely powerful because he picks up Aang and he takes him away from... He goes... First of all, he ventures into the swamp of Ko the Face Stealer. He picks up Aang and then proceeds to carry him back out. Nonchalantly, I might add. Now remember, Ko is a spirit that all other spirits fear because he can steal their faces. So this tells me that the panda spirit has to be super powerful in order to dare entering Ko's domain, even if it means helping the avatar. I mean, it really and truly makes no sense. Even the spirit attack on the Northern Water Tribe City, those are the guardians of the spirit portal, of the Northern Spirit Portal, who end up attacking. Unalaq may cleanse them of his anger, but he certainly doesn't call them out of the spirit world. They come because the forest gets destroyed, nothing more. And speaking on Vaatu, we learned through the Legend of Wan, the beginnings part 1 and part 2, and the season 2 finale, that if either Rava or Vaatu get destroyed, they basically end up respawning inside the other one. Rava did it to Vaatu, and I'm pretty sure that Vaatu did it to Rava many times before Wan intervened and broke the cycle. So my question is, if Korra cleansed Unalaq Vaatu, Unavaatu, that is, then is Vaatu trapped with Unalaq and doomed to reincarnate the same way that Korra is and the other avatars? Or is he stuck in the spirit world? The two of them, like, are the two of them dead? Or is the avatar or is it that the avatar cycle ends because the death of Rava splits her from the cycle of reincarnation and she ends up back in Vaatu? I mean, if that's the case, then Vaatu would end up inside of Rava and Unalaq would end up in the spirit mist somewhere. And if Vaatu is inside of Rava and Rava is inside of Korra, then this means that Vaatu is inside of Korra. Do you see where I'm starting to get at? It's extremely unclear as to what their exact fate is, and more to the point, it's never really addressed. The fact that the greatest evil that the world has ever known is now within the Avatar, seems to completely breeze by everyone else. I mean, it presents us with a serious problem, but the series seems to basically be like, you know what, we're not going to worry about it because it's not going to be relevant for another 10,000 years. I mean, I don't know. I honestly don't know. Speaking on the spirits, I'd like to know, how did Korra learn how to spirit bend? And don't say that her uncle taught her, because her uncle did not teach her. There is no scenes of her uncle ever actually teaching Korra how to spirit bend, or Korra ever actually working on her spirit bending. It's her uncle can spirit bend, so thus she can spirit bend. Learning to see through the spirit lines, at the very least, Toph was there to show her how to do it. We got more of a training scene between Korra and Toph in 10 minutes than we ever got in 3 episodes, or actually 5 episodes, of Korra and Unalaq in terms of spirit bending. I mean, it just happens, and it has so many different kinds of problems. I mean, at least in season 3, we see Korra trying and succeeding, learning how to metal bend. Season 4, we see her learn how to see through spirit vines, even though she only ever uses it once. It's interesting, and it teaches us so much about the Avatar when we see the Avatar learn how to do something. But that's something I'm going to address in my list of season 2 problems. Now this brings me to a question that I've had in the series overall. Now, I referred to Korra because it's most pertinent, but it really does apply to all the avatars, Airbender, all the avatars behind them. Why is it that avatars never really seem to learn anything about advanced techniques of bending? I mean, look at it this way. I can excuse metal bending for everyone but Aang and Korra, because Toph only invented metal bending after the Great War. I mean, look, Aang may have been an airbender, but he was a pretty proficient earthbender. And earthbending is the opposite of waterbending as much as it is the opposite of airbending. But Korra somehow managed to pick it up, not proficiently like a true earthbender would, but enough that she can use it to a point, right? I mean, we Aang's an airbender, she's a waterbender. Neither of them are very good earthbenders, but you know what? They're proficient enough. Korra was able to learn earthbending. I know Aang, I've seen Aang pick up mountains and do tons of stuff with earthbending, so I know that he's good enough. I see really no reason why Aang couldn't have made the effort to learn this, what is a very useful earthbending technique. I mean, right? I mean, agree or disagree? Would it have been useful for Aang to know how to metal bend? And the fact of the matter is, he never really learns. But this is true of so many of the other advanced bending techniques: lightning bending, blood bending, plant manipulation, spiritual projection, lava bending. All of that is quirky and wonderful and unique and amazing about all of the 4 different elements, and the Avatar isn't able to do any of it. I mean, they basically, even look at Avatar Roku. Avatar Roku couldn't bend magma. He had to go into the Avatar state. To do it, and that was after he was dead, on the summer solstice, I might add, when he was most powerful, so he could destroy the Earth Kingdom Temple. It seems to me that the avatars really just learn the basics and how to really, really power them up. But other than that, there's nothing, almost nothing about advanced bending in their technique. I mean, at the very least, healing would be useful, and it's surprising Aang never learns about healing. Korra manages to pick it up from Katara, bless her heart. As a matter of fact, I would say that Korra is probably one of the most progressive avatars since Wan. I mean, and that's saying a lot. I mean, metal bending, healing, spiritual cleansing, seeing through spirit vines. If we had another season, she probably would have ended up solving all the world's problems from one of the spirit groves in Republic City. Every day she would have gotten up and for 6 or 7 hours just sat there looking throughout the world, seeing what the problems are, and using her spiritual bending to fix whatever's going on. I mean, and then afterwards she and Asami would go and have a nice meal or whatever, right? I would watch that season like you wouldn't believe. I needed to be a thing so bad. But honestly, Korra seems to be the only one who ever really picked up advanced bending. And even so, Korra doesn't know super amounts of advanced bending. She doesn't know lightning bending. She doesn't know blood bending. I mean, I assume that those would be useful at some point, even if Katara does think it's taboo. I'm pretty sure at some point she had taken Korra aside and said, look, in waterbending there's this one technique. Never use it unless you absolutely have to. Okay, here's how you blood bend. I feel like that's a thing that would have happened. But it's never shown to us. We never get it, and we never get any instance of her using it. So we have to assume she doesn't know how to. Within Season 2, we also had The Legend of Wan, and one of the big questions that Wan left me with was about Unalaq and Vata. I mean, we know that they're spirits, that when spirits enter the bodies of living people, they kill them if they stay too long, and they cause the people to transform. They cause their bodies to transform into half-humans in the process. This is because the bodies are trying to acclimatize to the spiritual energy being present within them. Only Wan ever seemed to manage to merge successfully with a spirit by very prolonged and repeated exposure to fine-tune himself to Rava's spiritual energy. And even so, being bonded to Rava, having Rava inside him, despite the fact that this would allow him to use all 4 elements, it nearly killed him several times. Even so, he managed to become in sync and combine with her during the harmonic convergence. Vato and Unalaq, for all of their plotting together, they haven't really had any of that contact, right? He hasn't been able to get used or acclimatized to any of Vatu's spiritual energy. On top of that, Rava had much less spiritual energy than Vatu did. Vatu was a gigantic, 9-story tall, super gigantic spirit, whereas Rava is a little thing the size of the palms of your hand. I have to ask, when Vatu entered Unalaq, why didn't it kill him? Why wasn't he instantly vaporized the second that Vatu entered him? I mean, sure, we see Vatu change Unalaq after Rava's defeated and she's absorbed into him. But the question still stands. Why didn't Unalaq die? The only reason that they were able to bond together was because it was convenient for the plot that they do so. I really don't understand. I honestly do not. And I would love to have that question answered. And finally, at least one of the last questions, and it's a really big question, one of the really big questions that the Avatar series leaves open at the season finale and then through season 3 and season 4 has to be what remains of the Avatar spirits. Korra, we know, is still bonded to Rava, and she seems bereft of any and all spiritual guidance. In many ways, she's the last Avatar and the first Avatar, setting what can be considered a parallel to Wan. But the question still stands. What happened to the other Avatars, and will Korra ever manage to reconnect with them? I mean, are they destroyed when Rava is defeated? Do they exist in some way outside of Rava within the spirit world? I mean, that's a pretty important question, and only the comics and Bright know. I would love to be one of the people who knows that too. I'm sure there are many people who would like to know that. I can only assume that Wan and all the other Avatars were destroyed when Rava was killed, and so was Aang. I guess that means that Aang is truly spiritually dead. Now, I'm not going to go into anything about Spirit Mist or the Tree of Time. We really don't have a week to go through each one of those. And I'm not, even if we did, I wouldn't attempt it. I mean, or how the Fire Sages managed to get a hold of a group of Sky Bison when exactly one was left in the world, or what happened to the people living in the Northern Air Temple. You know, the engineers, and all the kids who are learning how to fly. I mean, these are really good questions, but asking them is not really productive. My final question, my really and truly final question would be, I'd simply like to know, how did Jinora end up being able to project her spirit after a week being separated from her body and being stuck in the spirit mist? I mean, and on top of that, how was she strong enough to enter Unavatu and find Rava on top of that, considering that she was nothing more than a speck of light in what can be considered an ocean of living, writhing darkness? Give me one good explanation that does not involve her sensing spiritual energy, because she had no idea how to do that before it was ordained by the Deus Ex Machina that she could. And I doubt that she knows what Rava's spiritual energy feels like, considering that she's only ever met Korra and been with Korra in the spirit world once, and they were immediately separated. How she even knew to enter Vatu is beyond me, since she wasn't there for the explanation about the 10,000 year cycle and how one balances the other one out. She wasn't. So I'm curious, how did Jinora know to do any of the things that she did? Season 2's finale, along with the consequences of Season 3, gave me a few questions. Not many, but few. But very specific and very important. For example, if the spirits and the vines and the people are one and the same, as explained by the giant yellow hedgehog in Season 3, Episode 1, then can the dead, who we know live in the spirit world because it is their version of heaven, hell, and purgatory, good, bad, or obscure, can the dead come back to the physical world with the spirit portals open? This is a question I've seen asked on Twitter many times, and it's one that I'm asking now. We know people become spirits as the next stage of their journey. So, Why wouldn't they be able to come back? I'm sure that Zuko would love to see his uncle once more before he passes on and hopefully becomes a young man again. That's something I need to see. I need to see young 18-year-old Zuko without the scar. And speaking of one of my favorite characters to ship around, I mean, you've got Katara, Jin, Yue, the list is actually endless. The story of how he got his dragon is very, very, very important. Will the comics answer it? I bloody hope so, because otherwise it will have been a waste of my time to read it. Of all the things I have to read, the fact that I'm taking half an hour out of my day and waiting and waiting and waiting months on end to get the comics, it would truly be a waste of my time. And another thing, while we're on stories that we will probably never get to learn about, what is the backstory of Zahir and his group? Right? An entire spin-off series. Now, I know that there was a very slight effort to tell us who they were, but you know what? It wasn't enough. An entire spin-off series could be devoted to Zahir, Pai Li, Minghua, and Ghazan learning to be the benders that they became and finding each other and basically being the greatest benders there ever were in a group. You know what that means? That at one point there was a group of benders so powerful that they probably rivaled the Avatar. And they had a martial artist who was badass enough that he could take out any bender. I mean, the fact that you could do a season devoted to each of them and then a fifth one to wrap it all together, it would be perfect. Nickelodeon, get on that. Actually, scratch that. Nickelodeon, you're not allowed to touch that because you're only going to make it terrible. Internet, get on that. Make a series. Make the legend of Zahir. make the story of the Red. I don't care what you call it. Just make the story of the Red Lotus so that we know the backstory and just everything. Just everything. Are those my questions for Steve? I've got one. What are the airbenders going to do now that the Northern Air Temple has been destroyed? Do they rebuild it? Does it stay melted? This is information I need to know because the Northern Air Temple is extremely important in terms of air nomad culture. It is the house. It is what houses the history of the air nomad people. The air nomad's history is written all through the walls and on top and all through the building. It's full of their history. So are they going to rebuild it? Are Jinora and Tenzin going to remake all of that history? Are they going to go and repaint all the walls and redo all the scripts and all the stories? It would be literally a lifetime's worth of work. But that's a question we need to know. What happens to Northern Air Temple now that it has been melted off the side of a mountain? And consider this: that's what Ghazan did. The Fired Nation might have destroyed, might have completely wiped out the airbenders using firebending. They left the temple standing, so let that be a lesson as to how evil Ghazan actually was. In season 4, I only have a few questions as well. Firstly, what was Kuvira's backstory, and what was her punishment? I know I'll never get to know the true fate of Korrasami, because there will be no Korra comics. In case you didn't know, that Michael and Brian are not doing Korra comics. They are burned out on Avatar. They've said nope. We wash our hands. We're moving on. But Kuvira was important. And I feel that getting to know why she truly did what she did instead of the lame excuse of a backstory that they shoehorned into the last 10 minutes was something that we really, really needed. And we only got part of it when Suyin told half the story. We only got part of it when Korra confronted Kuvira. We need to see the development of that character into becoming the tyrant that she did. I'm also left wondering, what does the Fire Nation look like in this postmodern steampunk Avatar universe? I am baffled as to why we were never allowed to glimpse the secret of Fire Nation. And now, quite frankly, we never will. It's sad. And speaking on firebenders, Izumi's mother. I am insatiably curious to know who she was. The possibilities, like the amount of people we can ship Zuko with, are literally endless. She definitely does not have Mai's temperament or Tylee's energy, so who's the baby mama? I gotta know, who the baby mama? Did he finally go back to Ba Sing Se and pick up where he left off with Jin? Did he return that ostrich horse to that girl that he stole it from, and then that's how they started their relationship? Someone tell me something. I need to know. Did he marry some random Fire Nation girl? What was her name? I need a name. That's all I need. Kanto. Cough. Name. I need a name. Oh! I almost forgot. Who is Suyin's mother? Father. Father. We know who the mother is. But speaking on people whose parents we don't know, who is Suyin's mother? Father. Who is Suyin's father? Faja. Faja. Who is Suyin's father? We know that Kanto is Lin's father, and chances are we're going to meet him sometime within the comics of the Avatar universe. But we need to know who Suyin's dad. I have a very, very strong suspicion who it is. But okay, it's in the Rift. That's all I'm saying. It's in the Rift. Read that. You're probably going to figure out who I'm talking about. They both share an interest in metal working. So yeah, who is Lin's actual dad? Like, what's his backstory? How did Toph and him meet? We might get that in the comics. Who is Suyin's dad? I have a general idea who he is. I recognize her complexion and the eyes, but they haven't confirmed it, and I need confirmation before I can make that claim. Who is Fire Lord Izumi's mom? I need to know. And the final question. Actually, no. Not the final question. The penultimate question. Leaving the Fire Nation, I have to ask this. What happened to Azula? She did not just run off into the woods. Oh, that's a spoiler, by the way. I'm not going to say what for. But Azula did not just go crazy and run into the woods. Give me her ending. I need to know. I know she's still alive. If Zuko is still alive, she is still alive. That girl is tough as nails, even in her insane state. She lives. She lives to be a old woman. What? Tell me. Tell me. Look, I know I said my heart couldn't handle it. My heart can handle it. I need to know what old Azula looks like. I need to see her. I need to know. I need to know she's okay. And my final question, and this is one I absolutely have to ask, and one that I know that will never be answered. How did Avatar Aang and Chief Sokka die? I know, I'm ending on a really heavy note, but this is my final question. How did they die? It's mentioned that Sokka is dead in the very first episode. And we know that Aang has passed away since Korra is the next Avatar. It's mentioned in the opening credits. But this is one question we will never get the answer to. Because the comics, while they're good, are never going to get that far in the Avatar story. They're never going to reach the end of Avatar Aang's lifetime. They're never going to reach the end of Chief Sokka's lifetime. We are never ever going to see that. We're going to see at some point it's going to have its happy ending, and it's going to cut off while they're young, while they're the characters we still know. So we will never know what the true fate of our beloved Airbender and his comedically savvy idea man was. And I wish I knew that what his final moments were. What were his final thoughts? Did he die with Katara by his side? Was he surrounded by his friends? What did he perish in battle? What happened? I need to know. We all need to know, because he didn't just be Avatar Aang doesn't just belong to the Avatar universe. He belongs to all of us who watch the show and are fans. He is the reason for all of this entire channel. Everything here, everything correlated, everything that we've gone through in the last 3 years is all because of Avatar Aang. A fictional character in a fictional universe on a fictional TV show. Even so, he is beloved. How did he meet his end? We need to know. So that's really my final question. So that's been all the questions that the Legend of Korra left me with. Did I miss any questions? I don't think I did, but you know what? If I did miss a question and you want to ask it, leave it in the comment section down below. And when the final discussion that I do comes up, I will read those questions and I will see if it's possible to answer them. If you have an answer to any of these questions, I would love to know. If you have an answer to any of the questions that I can't answer, put them in the description. I need you to tell me. Tell me the answers to these questions, because quite frankly, it is killing me not knowing what any of this ends up as. That's it. This is what I want to know. Help me by teaching me. Tell me what happens. I need to know. So this has been my technical critique, and I will see you next time in the review.